Right, I think we should start now. So good morning, guys, and welcome to today's webinar. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're here to chat all things new to NetSuite and Anexa and how you can maximize your investment into NetSuite. So we have a great session planned. So a few quick housekeeping notes before we get started. We'd love to hear from you throughout the session. So please add your questions into the chat on the side of the screen. We have plenty of time for Q&A at the end as well. And this webinar will also be recorded. So we'll be sure to send you a copy after the session. So please feel free to forward it on to any of your colleagues. And let's start with some intros as well to both Simon and myself. So I know some of you already know me, but for the rest of everyone, I'm one of 3 customer success managers from Anexa, predominantly looking after customers in New South Wales, but also interstate customers all around Australia, excluding Victoria. I have about 7 years of tech sales experience. I actually worked for another partner from NetSuite in the past for about 2 years, and I've come full circle to Anexa. And in between that, I've also worked in cybersecurity. So that's my technical background. And Simon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, George. I've been with Anexa now for 10 months. My background is as a chartered accountant. I've held CFO and finance director posts in ASX listed and privately held companies. I've been using NetSuite as a client for 10 years and have known the guys at Anexa for most of that period. Done personal implementations as a client with Anexa, and I've also done contracting as a NetSuite implementer before joining Anexa late last year. Thanks, George.
Awesome. So to set the scene for the topic, what's new to NetSuite in 2024? In part 1, we covered native bank feeds for ANZ. So transactions flow automatically from your bank accounts into NetSuite. Also, we covered landed cost distribution to automate the application of landed costs across multiple item receipts in NetSuite. Now, in part 2, we'll be covering new app transaction line distribution, the seamless cost distribution at the time of invoicing, as well as NetSuite's guided learning interactive guides so users can learn while in their flow of work. And I'll hand over to Simon to get into transaction line distribution.
Thanks, George. We've actually, sorry to put you on the spot there, we've changed it around a little bit and we're going to do the guided learning first before the transaction line distribution, a late change. So what guided learning does within NetSuite is it provides tailored learning for users as they're using the system. So within NetSuite, on any of the given pages, it provides tailored learning for that specific page. It's kind of a click and follow type learning scenario. There's a little icon on the side of the page within NetSuite that you click, and it kind of, as you click on the individual sections of the page you're in, it kind of tells you where to click next within the screen and what that screen then offers you from a functionality perspective. How we see this as being of a real benefit for you as companies using NetSuite is it means that you don't have to necessarily maintain high-level NetSuite training guides anymore, and you don't have to train users yourselves. You can set up new users in the system and get them to go ahead and teach themselves through the learning as they're getting used to the system. What that means is that rather than reading training guides and process documents, they can actually be in NetSuite, undertaking their role and learning through using the system. I'm going to be honest here, and I've talked about this before. It's great for new users. Absolutely, new users to your organization are going to find this really helpful. New users to NetSuite are going to find it helpful. For those of you that have been using NetSuite for a long time, this functionality is probably not going to offer you a great deal, but it's certainly of use to those new people. And if you change role and you have a new section of NetSuite that you have access to, because your permissions have changed or you've changed role within your organization, this is going to give you a little bit of help to get up to speed on those new sections of the system. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share a video. It's a pre-recorded video provided by Oracle that kind of gives us some walkthroughs of what this looks like. Unfortunately, I'm unable to share the sound of that, so I will talk over the video as we go, but it's just going to give you a little bit of a flavor on how this works. So just bear with me whilst I pull up this video. You'll see the screen there. Video. There's the little widget on the right there, which you click on, and it gives you a list of all of the different types of training that you can click to. And it's based on the role that you're currently logged into. It gives you specific user guides for the role that you're in and the various menu options that you have access to. And as you can see from this video, as they click through it, it takes you through where to click and what to do as you're going through the process. So it's very intuitive, and there's little videos embedded in the learning as well. And then, as I said, whilst you may already know NetSuite quite well, there's also some user guides and training around some of those more specific things, like they're showing you here, the personalization of dashboards and things like that. So whilst that's not training the NetSuite functionality from a transactional type process, it does give you that ability to learn how to customize things like that. It's really key as well that this learning is going to change. What's available in this portal changes as you navigate through the system. So if you go into, like here, the vendor screen, the training that's available in this portal is tailored specifically to the screen that you're on at that time. So you don't have to wade through heaps and heaps of training to find what you're looking for. It specifically points you in the direction of what's relevant to the area of NetSuite you're in at that time. So I'm just going to go back to our slides now. Shut off YouTube before it tells me something else. So that's a little bit about guided learning there. As I say, for people, a lot of you who have been using NetSuite for a long time, myself 10 years, I don't personally find it as useful as going into things like Suite Answers and the help guide, but certainly for people that are new to the system, it's a really good starting point. Oh, sorry, somebody else clicked for me. What we're going to move into now is transaction line distribution. I only learned about this in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I love it. I think it's a really good little app, which a lot of you are going to find really useful. And I wish that I'd had it previously when I was a client using NetSuite. Ultimately, what this app does is it enables you to distribute costs from vendor bills automatically, either within a subsidiary across things like departments and locations, or also across subsidiaries through intercompany journals if you need to redistribute costs that way. What it means is that we can automate a lot of these processes. So instead of having your manual month-end processes where you're creating manual journals to do redistributions, or having to run reports to see where numbers are and then work out what you need to distribute, you can set these up automatically to run, and they automatically default on vendor transactions, which can save a lot of time. One of the other really good things when we move to the next slide here is that this is an app that is entirely free to customers that have OneWorld, which is great. So it means it's accessible to any of you really easily. What I'm going to show now is I'm going to share my screen again and show you within NetSuite how you can get the app, where to find it, and then a little bit of the setup of how it works, and give you some examples of transactions in NetSuite so you can see the output of what NetSuite does from a GL impact on the transactions to get a real feel for the app. So again, I'm just going to share my screen and we'll talk through some of these. Okay, so what you're seeing here, and apologies, I'm going to be looking away at another screen to make it easier to navigate. This is just the home page. This is one of our demo accounts. In order to find this Suite app, on your menu at the top, there's the Suite app sub-tab. If you click on that, it opens up the Suite app marketplace. And within that, if you search transaction line or transaction line distribution, it's this one here, this transaction line distribution with the brown background. And clicking into that gives you the ability to install. Obviously, I've already got it installed, so it's telling me that. As I say, free to install, pretty quick to install, so that's great. From there, once you have the app installed, the next thing to do is to create the actual distribution templates that you want to use. So to do that, we go in the menu to lists, accounting, and right down the bottom, we have this transaction distribution templates list, which takes us to this page here. Now, I've already got 2 examples in place, and I'll talk through those now, those examples, and we'll then see how they are interacting with our transactions downstream. So the first one we have here is something that we've called insurance distribution. One thing to note with this is it is subsidiary specific. You can see here that I've set it to a specific subsidiary. So you do have to have a source subsidiary. So if you are looking to distribute costs from a bill across departments and locations, it's really important to note that that's limited to the one subsidiary. Now you can absolutely create multiple versions of the templates. There's no limit there. What we're doing with this one is for, in this case, the Australian subsidiary. We are creating a template to distribute it based on percentage into company. And what we're doing is we are going to distribute to the insurance account between 2 subsidiaries, because this is an intercompany one, Australia and New Zealand, 50-50. And I'll show you what that looks like shortly. But ultimately, what we're saying is that when we get an insurance bill through, we're going to want to automatically split that cost 50% between 2 of our subsidiaries. Alternatively, we have this one here, which is an intra-company. Again, we're limiting it to a specific subsidiary. This one, for this example, we're using electricity. And you can see here that in this distribution percentage column in the middle here, we're splitting it out by percentage across different departments. So within the subsidiary, we're automatically telling it that we want to spend 50% to this design and manufacture department, 40% to after sales care, 10% to on design consulting. So that's the templates. Just very quickly, what I will do as well, I'll just show you that it doesn't have to be percentage on the rate type. We do have the ability as well to set it to amount. So if you don't want to do it as a percentage of the total, you have predefined amounts. Maybe in your budget, you know that you're always going to split, a standard invoice that's going to come in from the supplier, and you're always going to split it based on amount across departments. You can do it by amount as well. What we'll do now is we'll jump into a vendor bill. This one's blank. The reason I want to show you that is on the vendor record, which I'll pull up here. This is a vendor record for an electric supplier. At the bottom here, under your subsidiaries, you can set over here a default distribution template. So in this scenario, we've added that into department electric template that I previously showed to you. What that means on the vendor bill, when we come in and we pick the electric supplier on the bill there, just bear with me whilst the demo account's a little slow and it loads. But what that does by selecting that vendor is down here in this default template, it's automatically populated that template. So you don't have to reselect it. If you select it on the vendor as a default, it just automatically pulls through onto the transaction. So what I'll show you now is the impact of what this actually does. So in this scenario for the electric supplier, we have a bill. We've coded it to the electric department. We've set it as $3,000, and we've used this default template of the interdepartment electric. Once you save the transaction, we this template there, it automatically creates a journal associated with to do the distribution that you've asked it to do. So I'll bring up that journal now, and as you can see, what that's done is it's split that $3,000 and it's split it across the same account. So it takes it back out of your expense account, and then it puts it back into your expense account, but with the specific departments in the percentage split that we had on the template. And that's automated on save of the vendor bill. It automatically creates this journal in the background. It does that. And there's a link on bill to the journal and equally on the journal back to the source bill. What I'll show you now is the second one. This is an insurance company vendor. We've got this default template set up for insurance distribution. And again, what I'll show you here is we had a bill that we created, $10,000. And on this template here, what we're saying is that we want it to go 50-50 between our Australian subsidiary and our New Zealand subsidiary. So again, on save of the vendor bill, it automatically creates an advanced intercompany journal. And as you can see here, what that does is, again, it credits the expense back out of the insurance account in Australia. And then we have the 50% going to insurance in our Australian subsidiary and the 50% going to the insurance expense in our Kiwi subsidiary, with the intercompany accounts receivable and accounts payable picking up the other side, so you have a proper intercompany arrangement there. So as you can see, I think this is a really powerful tool for some of your known distributions that you know in advance. One of the other things to point out on here is you do have the ability on individual lines, even if you have a default, to actually set different templates. So whilst the default comes in, if you come into an individual line, set the template separately. And there's also an exclude button as well. So if on any given line of a vendor bill you don't want it to apply to this template, you can exclude specific lines as well. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility within a bill. It's not an all or nothing option there. I'll stop sharing my screen now and jump back into the slides. So that gives you an overview of that Suite app. As I mentioned before, I see some real benefits to streamline some of your processes. And as I said before, I wish I'd had this when I'd worked with NetSuite previously. We just move on now. That kind of brings us to an end of the demonstrations.
Awesome.
To Q&A.
Thanks, Simon. Let's jump into some questions now. So let me open the chat. Question 1. Does the journal carry the reference number of the vendor bill that is getting distributed? I did see the J&L number of the vendor bill, but could not see the vendor bill number on the journal.
Yep, so I will very briefly share my screen again, just so you can see that. So this is the vendor bill, and over here in the left is the link to the journal, and then on the journal there's a link back to the bill in the middle. And then on the advanced one, you have the link to the journal there, and on the advanced intercompany journal, the link back to the bill. So it does track on both the bill and the journal, whether it's the intra or inter company, you get those links on both sides.
Awesome. Second question, what's the difference between this Suite app and the allocation schedules?
The allocation schedules are, I would say, give you a little bit more functionality. They're also, in my opinion, they can be a little more difficult to set up and maintain and process, because you create the schedule, but then there's the second step of actually running them, whereas this is all automated. It's a little bit easier to create in the first place and to set up. Broadly speaking, the functionality is the same. This is just, I guess, a lighter touch, something that's slightly easier to set up and use going forwards.
Yep. I don't see any other questions, but if there are any other questions, please feel free to add it in. I'll throw one over to you now, Simon. What do you know that's coming from NetSuite?
Yeah, I mean, NetSuite do the releases a few times a year, and there's always a lot of functionality that comes with them. One of the things that is coming is the new UI. It's been kind of talked about a little bit over the last few months and years, but it is finally coming. I've had a brief look at some of that, and I think whilst I like the UI in NetSuite, it could do with a bit of an update, and the new UI looks pretty good. So I'm excited to see that. And then obviously in a few months' time, we have the annual Suite World conference again, which is always great. There's always a lot of new things that we learn from that about things that are in the pipelines coming up. And I know, George, you have a little bit to talk about Suite World, so I might throw back to you to discuss that now.
Yeah, just on that topic. So Suite World registrations are still open. And I want to extend the invitation to all as NetSuite users to join us over in amazing Las Vegas for a great few days. For those that don't know, Suite World is Oracle NetSuite's annual conference. It's been running for over 10 years, and it's where NetSuite users, partners, and developers come together to make new connections, exchange ideas, and learn how to get the most out of NetSuite. It's a very worthy couple of days, and of course, we have a lot of fun there too. We'll share the registration page link in the email following this webinar. But if you have any questions or plan to attend, please reach out to your account manager. And I guess that's all we have time for today. Thank you again, Simon, for joining me. If you have any more questions after this as well, please reach out. We'll be sending a copy of the webinar to your email, so feel free to reply there or reach out to us on our website. With that being said, have a great day.